Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another live interview right here on TejanoKeyboard.com. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you guys joining us week to week, every week here. They've been very interesting. I can't believe how many of them we've actually done already. We've done like a dozen of them now, I think, or at least we're getting close to that. This week's shirt is a Father's Day gift. Well, before I do that, I have to let you guys know that I am that guy. I'm Rolando Revilla Jr. from TejanoKeyboard.com. I am your host, and today's shirt is a Father's Day shirt. And for those of you who play guitar, you know what my shirt says, and for those of you who don't, that's a D and an A and a D, so that spells dad. Kind of corny, but I love it. My wife got it for me, and so thank you to Bianca. Today we have our guest is none other than Mr. Gabriel Zavala. There he is. Gabriel, how you doing?
Hey, happy to be here. Thanks very much for having me, man.
Yeah, man. This was kind of like a long-awaited, anticipated. One of the keyboardists that people are like for sure, like asking a lot, like when you gonna get Zavala on the show? When you gonna get Zavala on the show? So I appreciate you, making time to be on here, and especially because like with this show, we like to talk obviously about keyboards, right? But also,
Mhm.
you know, other aspects of keyboardists. We kind of like dabble in a bunch of other stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh
We
yeah.
we wear a bunch of different hats regardless of whatever group we might be in, and it's kind of like some of that we can talk about that. But how are
Yeah,
you
for
doing,
sure.
man? How have you been? I know you guys kind of were in the middle of moving and stuff like that, but it looks like you're situated now.
Well, almost. We've been in our new spot for a few weeks now, and you know, we've had June is the craziest month because my birthday is a few days away, followed by my daughter's. My son's was at the beginning of the month, and then Father's Day. So it doesn't give us much time to actually move in. But thankfully, we're almost into the new spot, and we're just loving it. Everybody's healthy, everybody's happy, so it's all good.
Yeah, and right now, especially in these times, man, it's like you have to be thankful for your health because I
Oh
see
yeah.
right now that COVID is kind of like making its showing its face again there in Texas. You guys got what,
Mhm.
another 5,000 in 24 hours or something like that.
Really,
Yeah.
really. I wouldn't know actually. I don't watch much of the TV, honestly. I was for a while. I was tracking all the cases and everything that was happening. But I basically just been kind of, you know, listening to them telling us kind of like to stay home and not really mess around anywhere. So, when you're cooped up in the house, sometimes the last thing you want to hear is the latest statistics, and you
Absolutely.
do hear chatter on social media and things like that. So I know that there's some spiking, I guess, happening down here. But man, as far as the actual numbers, I couldn't tell you. You probably know more than I do.
And you know what? And it's healthy sometimes to kind of like distance yourself from, there's a lot of information in the world and not always, and it's not always positive information. And that can take its toll on somebody, not
Right.
just creative people, but just people in general. And,
Yeah.
I believe in the, in what's the word I'm looking for? There's like, um, illnesses related to despair and stuff like that. And so,
Oh
man,
yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
And stress, man.
and
When they say
stress.
stress is a killer, they're not joking, man. Like, a stressful mind, it's very difficult to get anything positive out of a stressful mind, man.
Yeah, man. And so for that reason, man, sometimes music is a great escape and
Yes.
and just kind of like, limiting news and social media sometimes is, although social media is kind of like the way that we, create our livelihood, right? We live on the internet now and times are really
Yes,
different
totally.
now compared to like, well, you've been around in the industry like back when it was in its heyday and stuff, so you've seen more of the transition than I have, but being
Yeah.
from an outsider looking in,
Hmm.
let's talk about that a little bit. Like, let's talk about kind of like your start into Tejano music and how all that kind of came to be and all that good stuff.
Oh, well, my beginning started in Northeast Texas, in Jacksonville, Texas, to be exact. And my family was, they were all musicians. So I basically grew up in in a house of music with instruments, all over the place. I think one of the first memories I have is of it was like a fake SM58 with a switch. It was so funny. I still remember what it looked like, but yeah, so it was just music, 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 and you know, we had, let's see, we had a bass player, a guitar player, keyboard player, singers, drummers, but I guess the instrument that people didn't really want to play too much was keyboards. And at the time, I mean, I was a kid, so if you had a keyboard, like you were making some bank, because I mean, they didn't have cheap keyboards back then, so
No.
it was either the Walmart keyboards or like you need to have some credit.
Yep.
But I went ahead and jumped on keyboards. My different family members hooked me up with some keyboards throughout the years, like starting with the Yamaha PSRs, those little
Yep.
home keyboards. And on mine, you weren't supposed to, but I figured out how to sequence on it. I don't know how, but there was a combination of buttons that you could empty out the song bank that came with the keyboard and then make your own. So that was my introduction to sequencing and all that kind of stuff. And once I figured out how to do that stuff, it changed the game for me musically, man. But
Photo
that's kind of how I
hacker.
started, man. You know.
Yeah,
And then I made my
absolutely.
way. Well, my family was, like I said, in Northeast Texas. We didn't have a lot of Tejano radio. Actually, we didn't have any Tejano radio or Chicano radio or whatever you want to call it, Onda. We didn't have any of that stuff. All it was an AM station that we'd get from Monterrey, and that was just like Bronco and a bunch of norteño stuff. But as far as the Chicano and Tejano sound, that was all like my aunts and uncles, their record collections, Little Joe, Freddie Gomez back in the day, Los Chamacos, like all these albums that they'd play to give us our introduction into Tejano. But once I got kind of to the age when I started writing and arranging music, I started looking at all the credits on the albums, and I noticed that a lot of the albums are being done in Corpus Christi, Texas. With Freddie's awesome label.
Right.
So I was like, man, I'm not gonna do anything here in Northeast Texas. If I want to get in the game, I really need to move over there. So I did, and I finished out my high school years. Uh, you know, the last years I was in high school, I didn't finish there, but um, like I think the ninth grade, 10th grade, when I got to Corpus, it was like, man, there was tons of musicians and tons of bands, and they were all like my age. So everybody started dropping out of school and getting in Tejano bands, man. I don't know if you guys have had Johnny Rod on from Moss, but Johnny Rod was used to play with Moss for years, man, and with Jimmy, and I actually was in a garage band with him in Corpus Christi when we were like kids, man. So there was tons of musicians that were doing their thing, and then from there, I went to San Antonio, and that's when I met Steph and started playing with Steph. And well, I stayed here, because we
Hmm.
kind of fell in love and had a family.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and so basically you transitioned right from just playing with whichever bands out of Corpus straight to San Antonio
Yeah.
and then just landing the gig with Stephanie.
Right, yeah, definitely. And of course, like probably the person that was most key in all of those early transactions with, I guess you could say, like getting out of the garage into like actually gigging with bigger bands was Valentino Maltos.
Oh yeah.
So he was, yeah, I met him with another band in Corpus called Grupo Beso, and we had a great friendship, and I mean, he taught me all kinds of stuff about theory and just tons of stuff that I didn't know. Um, and at that time, that's when the keyboard, like the sequencing and all that stuff started happening, and that's when I really started writing and producing my own stuff. But yeah, I mean, thankfully Val is the guy that actually introduced me to Steph and said that they had an opening, and then like just a bunch of other stuff. Like he was key in introducing me to the right people that kind of got me on the right road.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for those of you who aren't aware of Val, he's the guy who played sax with Jay for several years, and Of course,
Yeah.
Beso had all those awesome hits back in the day, Nuevo Amor, and
Yeah.
and he has such a signature sound that even though it's transitioned over the years, it's still like the timbre. You can still hear it,
Yeah.
in the Beso stuff. So
Oh
so
yeah.
so you started jamming with Steph, and you guys kind of started. You became the musical director kind of right off the bat, or did you kind of just kind of as people were weeding out, you kind of?
Yeah, yeah, I stuck around. I was the one that stuck around, and I guess being that I played so many instruments when I was younger, I really did jump around with the band a lot. So, you
Mm-hmm,
know, I started on keyboard. No, I actually started on bajo sexto, if you could believe that.
mm-hmm.
Um, Started on bajo sexto, and then jumped over to keyboards, and then keyboards and accordion, and then I'm sure I somehow transitioned over to bass for a while.
I remember that.
Played drums a few times with some really big gigs that we had when we just couldn't find a drummer at the moment. So I've kind of touched all the instruments in my time playing with Steph. Yeah, it's been crazy.
That's cool, man. And you know what? That's a good thing because, like, speaking from like say you yourself are a producer, right? In
Mhm.
order for you to produce a sound, you have to kind of be able to narrow into the details of like why does something sound the way that it does. And oftentimes, the only way that you can really understand why things sound the way that they sound is by doing it yourself. Is by understanding the physics or the theory behind certain things. Like why does the bass sound a certain way when you play it up towards the neck versus towards the bridge pickup, or stuff like that. If you want to sound more like Jocko
Yeah.
versus whatever, and those are things
Yes.
that as keyboardists and producers, musical directors, whatever, is like those little details are things that you have to pick up on. So then when you start kind of like being in the position of like, hey, I'm gonna have to tell you, I'm gonna have to kind of direct this thing, that you can tell people like, hey, this is the sound that we're looking for, and finding musicians that are able to, kind of like to be moldable. You know what I mean? Uh,
Right. Right.
we have a few shout outs here. Michael Rodriguez says hola. Also Chris Strunk all the
Yo.
way from up in Michigan. Chris Strunk says what's up. Angelo Alvarez
Nice.
says what's up, guys. So a lot of what's up. And Chris Strunk says super producer. Jesse Tovar says Zavala. So
Yo. Yo.
with,
Yo.
with a bunch of exclamation points. And so for those of you
Awesome. Thank you.
who are kind of joining us a little late here, Gabriel here is going to be celebrating his birthday in a few days, so we're having some celebratory
Woo-hoo.
drinks. Well, I'm not.
Yes.
I need
Yes.
one, but still, you
Man,
know.
I needed a drink to calm my nerves because I was super nervous about the show tonight.
Oh,
But
come
but
on,
you're a
man.
really good host and everything is really smooth. So I shouldn't even be drinking it, but it tastes so good.
It's all good. It's all good. Jesse Tovar wants to know what's in the cup.
Yeah, right here, Gentleman Jack
Hmm.
and Dr. Pepper cream soda.
There you
And
go.
it would have been Coke, but that's all we had in the fridge, so it is what it is.
The Coke got lost in the move, right? It's still in the other
Yeah, yeah,
fridge.
yeah. No, no, no. I'm telling you, all the parties we've been having, man, we just run out. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and that's I noticed that kind of like that atmosphere, that fun sort of atmosphere kind of translates itself into like the songs that you produce, the style of music that you come
Mhm.
up with. And it's very I like it. It's very energetic, very like lots of animo, lots of, it just gets you kind of moving. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not really a dancer, but I find myself tapping my feet to the to the music. And I gotta say, not to like jump way ahead in conversation, right? But
Hmm.
I have to say that one of my favorite songs for the longest time, and it's still one of my songs that I just like if I'm cruising around that I want to hear, is Delirio. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just something about
Cool.
that song, man. Like the like the space. I don't know how to explain it, man. It's like you get immersed in this sound. Like the synth pads
Thank
are just
you.
like warm, but like very. I don't know how to explain it, man. It just feels like you're immersed in I don't know how to
Well,
explain it.
thank
I
you.
mean,
Well,
you
thank
know
you, man. Thank
you're the
you.
one that created that, so I think you know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about. And that's probably I don't know if that's what you were going for or not, but that's definitely the way I feel it. I just feel like it feels liquid. You know, it just feels like I'm kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. You know, a lot of that comes from what I was listening to. Well, I guess at that time, but you know, I guess lately in pop music, it's kind of started becoming less about the sounds and more about space.
yeah,
So like,
man.
you know, and not only that, like a lot of cats will like they'll just purposely take off all the high end off of their pads to where it's like there's so much stuff happening, but you can't really put your finger on it. But it's just like you said, real liquid and fluid, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with that song in particular is create like a really cool space so the vocal can really cut through. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that was a really fun one. That's one of every time we work on an album for Steph, she always wants the club song. So that
Hmm.
was one of our club vibes, and you know, we do hang out at the clubs a lot. So, you know, like I said, going back to pop, you know, it's things have transitioned in pop, and it's gotten so simple. Um, like it's just as far as the sounds, you know, like you'll have like one real thick pad and maybe like a two-note piano line and like a hip hop drum beat, and that's the song. And now it's just all vocals. So
Yeah.
it's you know, I tried to bring some of that over into what we're doing, and that's I think that's what gives it its kind of flavor is blending kind of what's happening in the pop world with our Tejano roots, and that's kind of you know kind of where that stuff comes from. I think.
Yeah, you know, because that's the thing is that, like, I think for a long time, and I mean, I think it still holds true. I think the one thing that separates Tejano music from, say, traditional regional Mexican music is that I think it has roots, obviously, in both the Mexicano side, but also in like the American side, like whatever's happening at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look back at like
Mm-hmm.
say like Latin Breed, right? Well, what was big at that time, you know, the Earth, Winds, and Fire and like big horns, right? And then when you transition to the Mas and the, you know, the David Lees, the La Mafias, what was happening at that time in pop music? You know, you talk about some synthesizers and, you know, so like a lot of that stuff's going to just kind of drip over. But when you were talking about like, you know, creating space, the way I think of I think it may be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
almost like painting textures, right? It's not about sound anymore. It's about like a feel. It's like about like, and I don't mean a
Mm-hmm.
feel as in like feel the beat, but like a feel like a grain. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like
Well, I think you
textures.
know. I think when you want to explain it, you want to think about it in terms of like vibes and energies
Yeah.
and like and frequencies as well. But that's the kind of vibe you want to go for, man. And really, it's hard to explain something like that and the concept of it.
Hmm.
And I think that's one thing that kind of like makes it difficult to do what a lot of producers want to do in Tejano, and when they want to make it different or bring in a new flavor or a new texture, is that um, it's so difficult to put your finger on something like that, like a mood or a vibe or a I don't know how like yeah like just a feeling.
Hmm.
It's really
It
hard to create a feeling that you want someone to have when they're listening to your music, and I do that a lot. I think because if you can't just there's another dimension to the music, right? So it's
Mhm.
you got the lyrics and then you have the music, but then there's also I think like an energy and a vibe that you got to understand too. So I think like sometimes you might get a song that somebody gives you and they're like, I want this romantic ballad, but the lyrics are all like you know super aggressive and like not lovey-dovey at all, right? So
Mhm.
you're just like, well, this is kind of difficult because what you're saying but what you want it to sound like are two different things, you know. So you got to get
Right.
make sure that you're like you're saying you're putting like the foundation coat, like the base coat on a painting. That way you can you know just have something I guess unique to build on. And then I think that's always the trick for me with the song is making that, and then the Tejano stuff it comes easier. So you just kind of put
Mhm.
that on top of that, and boom, you got something kind of unique and kind of cool. I think.
You know, I was hanging out with one of these well, he's a college professor of jazz. He
Oh
happens to
wow.
be Chicano, and he grew up listening to Tejano music. and he lives in Michigan, right? By the way, I'll shout him out. I
Awesome.
don't. He's probably not watching, but I'll tell him about it later. His name is Diego Rivera, tenor
Cool.
saxophonist, alto saxophonist, great musician. But because he comes from the world of jazz, right? He studied like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Coltrane, whatever, right? He comes from that world, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember listening to Mas and stuff growing up, or Jay or whatever, and he's like, but the one thing that I've always noticed is like all the songs sound happy,
Got you.
and
Hmm.
that's kind of like what you were talking about, because like when you talk
Yes.
about like say que me lleven canciones, right? It's a Mas song,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it sounds super happy. It's all major and like it just sounds
Hmm.
like if you didn't
Yes.
speak the
Yes.
language, you just like that sounds.
Right.
One of my Caucasian friends once said that Tejano music sounds like game show music. Like it's like come on down, ba da ba da 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 da. It
It
just
does.
like and then when you're like, okay, this guy's talking about death. He's talking about
Yes.
like when I die, this is my
Yeah.
final request, right? And I know that the song does talk about like say for example like um I want people to drink and to sing and I want music and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So I guess
Hmm.
the vibe is kind of happy, but still like death is one of those things that you're like you try to
Right.
associate that with maybe like a minor or some kind of like dark sort of musical
Hmm.
ideas, right? Because I mean it's a
Hmm.
dark subject, it's not like
Yes.
hey, you guys want to talk about something fun? Let's talk about death. It's but what you're
Right. No, I
saying,
feel that, man.
yeah, when you're saying, people are like, "Hey, I want a romantic ballad." What's the song about? What's about, this guy who, went from camp to camp and, raped women or whatever. Like, I mean, that's what Gabino
Yes.
Barrera was
Yes.
about. It was like this horrible
Yeah.
guy who like rape and pillaged and people shot him and it's all like boom bum boom like super happy sounding. But no, I mean I think now, I mean, you being able to, and I say you as in producers in general, right?
Hmm.
Being
Hmm.
able to
Hmm.
like think from uh you know a deeper sort of place, right? To be like, okay, well, if these lyrics are going to connect with somebody because of like the topic that we're talking about, you have to create an atmosphere in order for it to, you have to have the right tools, the right canvas, the right whatever, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I think
Yes.
you've done a really good job, especially in recent years. I've been really following what Steph does and what you do, and your solo work you do for other people, and
Thank you.
and I do really feel that vibe, like of like connecting the feeling and like the lyrics, you know what I mean? Like well, Quien Quiere Shots is
Hmm.
kind of like, really like upbeat and, poppy and like, but it feels like that. Like that's like how you would feel at the club or something.
Well, it's that all that started, man, back when I started producing stuff for Steph because we were getting a lot of awesome songs, like when they would pitch songs for her album, but but they were like the typical progressions, like the typical everything, and it's just like, you know what? I guess because we were younger, we were like, we want stuff that's gonna move us. Like when we walk into a club, like we want to feel it. And then also like when people are at the shows, we want to give them that atmosphere, that party vibe. That way, when they walk in, they're gonna have an awesome experience. They're gonna have a good time. It's gonna feel energetic. Of course, you want the songs that are gonna hit home, but you do need a lot of songs that move people and actually, well, like I guess you kind of jump into the business of music too. That's what I do. Because when I think about a song, I have to think about, okay, well, this artist is going to have to perform the song. So what kind of audience are they coming from? Where are their like? What's the majority of people that go see them? And all that stuff ties into the music. So
Mm-hmm.
if they want, like Steph, for example, she's just a fun, energetic person. She comes from a dance background,
Mm-hmm.
and she loves to dance. Like we've danced together since we met each other. So a lot of her songs, she wants to make sure that people want to dance when they hear those songs. So that's my job, is to deliver that for her. And in the meantime, it rubs off on me too. So I definitely understand what she's saying because she's not very technical when she asks for things. She's very how what she feels, you know. So she'll say words like happy, words like fun, and things like that. And you have to be able to really, okay, what does happy and fun mean to you? But
Mm-hmm.
what's my interpretation? Is it's a difficult job to do sometimes, but I think we've narrowed it down over the years, man. Not only for her, but for a lot of the artists that I work with. You know, it's I think it's really important to be able to connect with their audience. You know, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And like, so for example, like, I remember reading it a while ago, but yeah, I guess I just, because of time, forgot about it or whatever. But then I saw that you recently shared it, but you wrote Sabes for Jay Perez. And
Yeah.
like that tune suits him. And the one thing that I realized early on about Jay was that he wasn't really doing a lot of cumbias, and then when he first kind of came out and did a cumbia, like it was good. It was a cumbia, right? But and this is just my opinion, and I'm not I'm bashing anybody or anything like that, but I kind of feel like that song, it was a good song, Si Tu No Estás, right? But I kind of felt like it came from a place where it was kind of like the label's like, listen, you need to record a cumbia, and so they're just like, well, let's just get this song, and because if you listen to the chord progression of the melody, it sounds like a ranchera. It sounds like a ranchera that they
Hmm.
did into a cumbia, right? But
Yeah.
and I think that happened a few times throughout his career until he kind of found his stride of which cumbias kind of work for him, right?
Hmm.
And I think Sabas was kind of like that break, in my opinion, right? Was
Really
that
cool.
breakthrough for him where it was kind of like, okay, this feels organic to Jay, right? This feels like
Hmm.
something Jay would sing, something that he would play, right? It feels
Hmm.
like Jay, but it was a
Cool.
cumbia, like it was organic
Yeah.
to what he was doing, and so I thought that was really cool, man. I mean, there was a couple other cumbias, like I like the No Quiero Estar Solo. That one was a pretty good one where it was kind of like, okay,
Hmm.
this doesn't necessarily
Hmm.
feel like a J ranchera. It feels like a cumbia, and
Yeah.
his
Man,
voice.
I remember those days when that was kind of a big deal. Like nowadays, you think about it like, wow, like what's the big deal about recording a cumbia?
Hmm.
But yeah, man, I remember those days where like, man, it was really tough to break in new ideas to the industry for a long time, man. Especially if you had your own twist on it. If it didn't sound like a certain style or a certain sound, like even program directors didn't want to mess with that, man. So I'm glad we've come as far as we've come as an industry to where it's like, man, I listen to to a bunch of different stations, man, and the stuff that I hear, it there's a lot of different styles of music in Tejano right now, you know, and it's really
Hmm.
cool that program directors and really everybody involved with pushing out music, they're allowing new fresh sounds to come in. So I think it's real helpful to the industry, man, and I'm definitely enjoying what I'm hearing on the radio right now for sure.
Yeah, and like especially like how you were talking about like lately, it's kind of been more about creating space, right? Like from a producer slash engineer sort of perspective, it's like you have to think of like how you're gonna carve out a place so it's more about the vocals as opposed to like the old school way of thinking. It's like it's about the drums and the keyboards and the sax, and then everything else kind of fills in, and the vocals are an afterthought. Unless
Oh.
the vocals are like Jay or somebody like that, or Joe Lopez is like, okay, we got to make the Estrella sound good, you know what I mean? But like when like most other productions were always like, man, the music sounds killer, and then the vocals, like I said, are an afterthought. But like
Yeah,
Billie
man.
Eilish right now, like she's all about that, just creating the big
Yes.
spaces, right? And like how you're saying, like the music is really muted. I don't mean muted like quiet, but I mean like matte, like just very
Yes.
with no, almost like with no polish. It's just kind of like really like gritty and kind of dark, but they create a lot of that brightness in her vocal, like her
Yes.
breathiness, the saturation of like her sibilance in her voice, and it just kind of creates this like, it's, you still feel the full spectrum of music, but it's not cymbals and pss, 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 it's just like
Yeah, yeah.
like a heartbeat and like a pad and like a
It's
little
tough,
bass line.
man. It
It's
is,
good
and
stuff, man.
that's what we're dealing with right now. And I think when I hear that, when I hear somebody bringing that to Tejano, it really excites me, man. So, because this lets me know that there's other cats out there that are listening to other styles and they're bringing it over.
Hmm.
So it's really cool that you hear that stuff in the music and that you bring it up because I don't think a lot of people have that kind of ear, or maybe like I was telling you earlier, maybe they'll dismiss it and not really give it the time that it deserves. They're like, oh well, if that doesn't sound like such and such, then I don't care. I don't want to get into it. But the fact that you are opening up and you're like, okay, well this makes sense because whatever, whatever. I think that's really cool that you're taking the time to really take the music part like that. It's really cool, man.
Yeah,
Very appreciated.
and this is the thing. That's what this whole channel is about. Like, yes, we talk keyboard, we talk theory, we do tutorials and stuff. Learning how
Hmm.
to program keyboards. I just did a video on it yesterday, or at
Cool.
least I uploaded it yesterday about just.
Hmm.
But all that to say that the more information that's out there, the more the industry it elevates everybody. Because here's the thing, and
Yeah.
I think you might agree with me, and if not, that's fine. But we can talk about it a little
Hmm.
bit. To me, I
Hmm.
feel like because everybody is stuck in the and there's no disrespect to anybody, right? But everybody's
Hmm.
stuck in listening to the staples, right? That nobody wants to veer away from that, and therefore nobody's really giving anything else a chance, right? So the more people that are
Hmm.
talking about these sort of textures, these sort of ideas, right? Like to incorporate some of
Hmm.
that stuff to say, hey, it's okay to do this, Um, I think that's what's eventually gonna help the Tejano music industry. So I'm not saying that this show is about saving or whatever, uh,
Yeah.
but it's in its own little way, just kind of throwing in its 2 cents into the pond of what our industry is about. Uh,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got a question right here. It says, Zavala, in your career, what is your most what are you most proud of? Is it a project, a song, an award? Uh, well, what
Oh man.
really stays close to your heart?
Um, Man, that's a tough one. Because if I had to choose, um, man, I couldn't put a lot of these things above something else in my career. But of course, just man, I don't know, man. It's a difficult question. Of course, the awards are always appreciated, and whenever a nomination comes up, that's really cool. Um, Also the accomplishments that like I go through with the band, when we go through stuff together, that makes it an amazing accomplishment as well. But being that I work with my family as well, to see Steph have win an award or have a number one, that hits close to home. And then of course, now that my kids are getting into music and seeing them accomplish things, that hits close to home. So it's really hard to say what's the one thing that really takes the cake. But um, man, there's so many just moments that I'm proud of, that I've achieved in my career. That man, if I could write them all out one day, it'd be great. But I would say like maybe top three um, was winning uh, an award as a solo artist. Um, when I released my music as a solo artist, that was a big step for me because as a writer and a producer, like I was always ready to help other artists and people like that, and help however I can with writing songs or producing. But when I released my own stuff, it was kind of a weird situation, but basically I had to release music just to kind of protect my songs because at the time I was releasing songs and pitching them out to really big artists, and I had a situation come up where I was kind of worried that some of the songs might get recorded without my permission. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and just put them out there with my guide vocal on there. And one of them happened to be Lucis, man. So like basically the whole Algo Alternativo album was just my personal demos that I was gonna release one day, but it just so happened that I had to release the whole album at once. And the fact that that album won an award for Best New Artist, I think, at the Tejano Music Awards, I think that's something that holds a very special place in my heart because it's something that I never expected to do. But the fact that it was accepted so much by the industry to give me that award, I think that's something that I hold real close to my heart for sure.
Yeah, and the way I see it, because like obviously I dabble in a little bit of the music side stuff, not as much as say you or like a Gilbert Velasquez or Bob Gallardo,
Mhm.
people who produce like a lot of material, right? But to me, it's kind of like they're all almost like children. When somebody asks you, "Hey, what's your who's your favorite child?" You can't be like, "Oh, well, this kid right here, I love this kid more than I love that kid."
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't do that sometimes because when you create music, right? Whether it's for somebody else or for yourself, or you know,
Mhm.
like a little piece of you lives in that. You know what I mean? Like you
Oh
give part
yeah.
of your soul to that track, or to that
Mhm.
song, or to whatever it is, right? Even if you're just
Yes,
mixing a
totally.
song, you
Mhm.
a part of you is in that song. And so when people say,
Right.
oh, well, which of your creative offspring do you appreciate the most? That's
It
all of
is.
them.
It's
I love
weird.
all of
It's
them.
weird.
It is weird. But it's an interesting question that does come up. Quite a bit. People are always like, "Hey, what are you most fond of in your career?" And sometimes it's something as trivial as just say, "Oh, there's this one time I played in front of like
Yeah,
10,000
yeah,
people or whatever." And I mean, obviously, those are good like accolades, good pats on the back to be like, "Oh yeah," but like
yeah,
when you
yeah,
really, it's like when you're performing, you're just entertaining people, right? But when you're
yes,
creating something, that's like a part of you. And so to be able
yes.
to be like, okay, so which creation do you like most? That's
Yeah,
kind of a
man. No,
difficult.
definitely. Yeah, it is. It's a weird process. Well, not everybody gives that much of themselves into their projects, but when you do, yeah, it's something that definitely sticks with you, and I think that's what has helped me stay a little, I guess, relevant with the artists because um, I think they know that I really do take what we're doing seriously, and that's from the biggest artist to the smallest artist. Um, I never take anything lightly. Like I just feel like whenever I hook up with a new artist or work with an artist that I've been working with, I think that it's a very serious thing. I have to take their career seriously, what they're trying to do, their vision, and I don't know how to not do that to like all the way, So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a real difficult thing, man. But I think that's something that I really strive to do with every project is really try to make something special, something memorable, something like treat every song like it's your last song, and I think that's kind of what's kept me working as much as I have. So I'm so like I gotta send this very special shout out to all the artists that I'm working with right now, man. I'm sure some of them are tuned in right now, but without them, man, shoot, man, none of this, you guys wouldn't, have any of this music to listen to out there. So, definitely huge shout out to all the artists that have taken the time to work with me throughout the years, and we've made some really great stuff, and that's why I appreciate your show, man, because you really get a chance to reflect and think about stuff that you've done in the past, and some of the questions do kind of knock you back because you're like, oh my, I have never thought of that.
Yeah.
but but it's really cool to have a place and a space to be able to talk about these, just little things that not only myself but a bunch of your guests have done in their careers. So I appreciate that and this opportunity very much as well, man.
So let me ask you this: we're talking about creating music and stuff like that. So
Yep.
when you get an idea for a song, right, or when somebody approaches you with a song, because obviously you produce songs for other songwriters or other musicians,
Mhm.
right? What's the thing that catches you the most? Because I know, like, well, we've talked on like not on the interviews, but within my tutorials and stuff. Like I break down music into like different categories. Like percussion, bass, harmony, and melody, right? At its
Okay.
basic forms, right?
Uh
So,
huh.
do you listen to the words, or do you kind of like hear the melody first, or like, or is it different for each song? Like, what is kind of like your approach to be like, okay, here's a song that somebody gave me, let's do something with it.
Yes. Um, Well, usually it's business first. So
Of
they're
course.
coming to me. Yeah, yeah, because they're coming to me for a reason, and they're coming to me for whether it is something that I've done in the past or something that they feel that I can do that someone else can't.
Mhm.
So the first thing I do is try to determine, okay, how can I get you the most? return on your investment. So sometimes that's what really kicks things off, as far as stylistically, what we're going to work on. Because if they tell me like they want to do this, but all the songs they're giving me are that, then I have to say, okay, well, let's look, because your vision's not balanced, because you're asking for this, but you want to do that, but you're bringing me these songs, and that has nothing to do with that. So it'll change. Sometimes we'll scrap everything that they had, and we'll be like, okay, so what I'm going to try to do is get you closer to your vision, or what your goal is. And that's really how things start. And then of course I'll look at the artist, or band, and I'll look at their strengths and weaknesses, and I'll try to build something that really supports them as an artist, so they can really wail on stage, or just really interpret that song to the best of their abilities using their strengths. So I'll look at all that stuff too, and then look at their market. What's relevant in their market, who's hitting right now, and just ask a bunch of questions, and then that'll get me on the right road to what I think the song is gonna need, what it's gonna need to sound like, the instrumentation, the melody, all that stuff. But I guess at the end of the day, that's really what really is the what navigates the project, is making sure that the artist gets as much bang for their buck at the end of the day.
Hmm. And so when you say projects, right? Like, I know that the industry has transformed so much in recent years. Like, it almost feels like the days of like full albums is kind of like on its way out. You know what I mean? Everybody's all about the singles and kind of like doing stuff like that.
Hmm.
Or even like Intocable, right? So like Intocable will create an entire album but not release it till they're ready to, and like release singles, but it's almost as if they get the most mileage that they can out of the entire album, where they basically
Yeah.
create a single out of each song is single material. You know what I mean? Where and
Hmm.
I mean, obviously they have phenomenal resources, whether it's songwriters like you know um Louis Padilla or whatever, right?
Hmm.
They just have that at their fingertips, that they're going to be like, okay, we're going to release this amazing album with 14, 15 songs, whatever, and we're going to
Yeah.
create this like sort of atmosphere. So they're kind of like the exception to the rule. But do you feel kind of like that's the way that things are going, where like it's going to be a bunch of people just releasing singles, and then like later on like compile all the singles and release that as an album? Or do you think people are going to start kind of like trying to do in conjunction, getting a bunch of songs that would be single worthy, and
Hmm.
trying to release them consecutively or whatever, but along with the album simultaneously? Or do you just see Tejanos just kind of like going with the status quo and be like, hey, we're going to release an album, there's going to be two or three hits on it, and the rest of it's just filler?
Wouldn't it be awesome if there was two or three hits on every album? Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
just gonna put two or three hits on this one. No, no, it's not that easy. But no, man, I really do believe that it's all up to the artist, whatever it is that they're trying to do. Because there are some artists out there that just want to create. They don't care if it's for an album, a single, LP, whatever. Like they just want to release, so they could care less. Um,
Hmm.
but then there's some bands that are more, or and artists that are more traditionalist, to where they're like, okay, well, we have to record an album, we have to release the singles, and it's got to be 10 songs, and it's just because that's how everyone's always done it. So and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I do have to say that, just in experience, um, all of the artists that I'm working with are working towards a full album, but at the time, some artists can only afford a single. So that makes more sense. So
Hmm.
if your budget's tight, and your budget's like, you can only record one single at a time, and hope for the best for that. There's nothing wrong with that, and I
Hmm.
think that where we are right now, that's that's the best way to go for a lot of artists. Instead of investing 10 songs, because it's hard enough to produce one hit song, but
Hmm.
to try to do it 10 times over on a full CD, if maybe the direction that you chose is wrong, so like the whole album's going to be wrong. Whereas if you just put out a single at a time, you can really test the market to see, hey, is this working, or do the fans like that kind of music from me? It gives you more of a chance to test the waters, I guess you could say. But some bands like Intocable, they already know what they're gonna do. I mean, it's not exactly, but they know that they're gonna put out an album. They know that they're gonna, you know, they already they already know what's up, so they're not trying to, I guess, reinvent the wheel. They do what they do, and they find success there. But then I guess you have to ask yourself, like, are we talking about established bands or bands that are just coming into the industry? Because everyone's on their own path. There's different levels, and I think that's the thing is, as a producer, is to be able to just pick up the phone, hear someone's problem or something that they're having problems with, and help them to find the best solution, whatever that may be. So for their specific situation.
Mm-hmm. And so now that we're talking about that, well, like whether it's bands that are established, bands that are kind of like trying to break into the scene, so like not to beat a dead horse here, but speaking of Billie Eilish or even The Weeknd, right? The Weeknd's been around for a while, but it seems like just like he had some kind of like marginal success, but like now he's really like kind of like hit his stride. And I feel like like maybe a handful of years ago, Bruno Mars was kind of like in the same boat where like he would have one or two hits and like his hardcore fans would buy the whole album and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that the new artist should strive to kind of do the whole album thing, or do you think that I guess that's what I was asking is that do
Yeah.
you feel
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
the full album thing is kind of a thing of the past or at least on its way there, or do you feel that that's kind of like what everybody's striving for but because of like you were saying budget constraints or whatever it happens to
Well,
be?
it's on all on each person, because I don't know how you consume music, but I consume music by my phone.
Hmm.
So like whenever I hear new music, it's on a playlist. So I'll most of the stuff that I listen to is chart based, just because I'm always studying. So um, for example, I'll have my Spotify out, and I'm not gonna sit there and listen to someone's full album, because I need to get a picture of what everybody's putting out. So just give me one song from every artist, but I want the top 50 that are hitting right now in the United States. So I'll be listening to a playlist. So whether that artist has released a single or an album, it doesn't matter to me at that point. I'm just trying to consume music. Now, if there's a song that I hear that I love, I'm just like, man, I know that all of their music is gonna rock because I love what they're doing. So then at that point, yeah, you want to make sure that you have lots of music online. That way people can binge. Because I do think we have become a binge society where, like, once we find something we like, we want all of it 24 hours a day until we can't stand it. So,
Instantaneously, yep. Dude, it's
yeah, so
the Netflix generation, man. That's what it's all about, man.
exactly. So the same thing with music, as long as you have a catalog that's consistently growing, I don't think it matters if it's part of an album or a single. It's just about what you want to do, and but the only thing I think right now, the only thing that would the people that would want to release an album are people that want to say submit it for like an awards show where you can only submit an album,
Hmm.
which is standard, what, like a 10-song collection, 9, 10 songs or whatever or more.
Hmm.
So I think that would be the only reason that you'd want to release an album, because even like the technology, like CDs, I wouldn't recommend anyone press more than 1,000 CDs, like anyone. Like, it doesn't matter if you're the biggest artist in town or just starting in, like, don't order more than 1,000 CDs, because you're going to sit with, 2,000 CDs that you didn't sell, and they're never going to sell. They're just going to be sitting there. So right now we're in a digital, you know, uh, um, environment right now. So
Hmm.
press your 1,000 for your mom and pop CD stores. Sell as many as you can at the gig. But unless you got like that one hit album that just like everybody wants, then print more than 1,000. But
Hmm.
you should definitely start out with printing 1,000 if you're going to go the CD route.
Yeah, and the thing that you were talking about too. I mean, it's obviously for those of you who haven't actually gone through the process of actually making a CD, not an album, but actually like manufacturing a CD, is that
Yeah.
you get a better break the more units you manufacture. So the manufacturers will always make it seem more appealing to you to be like, hey, well,
Yeah,
you can get 1,000 CDs for this much, but for $500 more, we can give you 3,000 CDs
yeah,
or whatever. And so then you're kind of like stuck there, like, well, man, that that really brings the cost per unit down more. But then, like you said, you're sitting on that merch, and then when are you going to sell it? You're going to end up having to give a lot of
yeah.
that away for free.
Yeah, what
But
which is not a bad thing, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're making good decisions with your money, with your budget, That
mhm,
way, like, because that $500 you've spent, you could have gotten something else for the band, or
yep,
another song or whatever. So,
absolutely.
you just got to think about all that stuff before you're gonna make a big expense. So,
Yeah, and as far as like the consumption of music, like I feel like and this is just me speaking personally, right? And I say this from time to time, like not to hijack the interview, right? But I do consume a lot of music digitally. I mean, who doesn't, right? It's ubiquitous.
mhm,
It's on your phone. You can get Pandora, Spotify, whatever, right? But um, I talk about Intocable a lot. I talk about artists that and not just because you're on, right? But
mhm,
the last few albums that Steph has put out, I buy the actual
mhm,
tangible album because like from your perspective, you're thinking, okay, I got to work. I got to hear what's happening, right? Because you can't
mhm.
really be in like
Yeah.
an echo chamber of like, what are other Tejano musicians doing. You're trying to think outside to bring a fresh
Mhm,
perspective in. But from a fan perspective, right?
mhm,
um I like to like just hear creatively what the artist was thinking in
mm,
in the timeline of music, because like there are some albums where it's just a collection of songs, right? But then there's albums
mhm,
that are actually thematic, where they all have some kind of bloodline through the entire album, where you can listen to it from beginning to
yeah,
end,
man.
or something like where like, so for example, not to like again beat a dead horse, but Intocable, like Highway or Perception, those last two albums that they put out,
Mhm,
Highway was all about songs about being on the road or experiences from the road, you know what I mean? And they
mhm,
get pretty
mhm.
deep with some songs, La Obscuridad, where they're talking about being, in the darkness and coming out on the other side, you know, differently. And or even like
Mhm.
the song about the missing women, Dia
Oh yeah. Mhm.
730 or whatever. I forgot what it
Mhm.
was, but
Mhm.
like, you really start to like think like these guys have actually touched these souls. Like they've talked to these people that like, hey, we have, children that are missing and we don't know whatever happened to them. And you know what I mean? So like
Wow.
from like a fan perspective, to be able to understand what they were thinking from beginning to end, because, like you said, it depends on the artist, right? But it could either be like the song, like one song is the work of art, right?
Yeah.
Or
Mhm.
an album could be the work of art and the songs are just kind of like the jigsaw puzzles to a bigger picture, right? But anyways, enough about me and how I consume music. But no, for real, and I don't say that like I said because you're on, but I do really
Yeah.
enjoy the I have the last few um Stephanie albums. My wife and I, our van has where you can actually put in the physical CD, and then it rips it to the internal hard drive, and then we get the CD, and our
Wow.
car still has a CD player but doesn't have the drive. So then they go to live in the car. So they're
Oh,
on
I
the hard
see.
drive in the van, and then they're physically in the
Man, that's
car.
awesome. No, that's awesome, man. And I think that, like I said, it all depends on the artist. So Steph's one of those as well. Like she wants the album to make sense. She wants a theme for the full album. So whenever I'm working on songs for Steph, I know that whatever songs we're working on, they have to kind of tie together somehow.
Hmm.
Somehow we have to put some kind of theme throughout whether it be through music or through the beat or
Or
through the
through the
message of the
lyrics.
songs.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. That's what we try to do with every album is we listen to the song, write the song, and we're like, okay, does this fit in with our entire vision for the entire album? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And like that's why we have a hard drive full of songs that didn't quite make the cut. Because I think, man, I try to submit, man, as many songs as I can, but sometimes it's gotten up to like we'll be at the final listening table with like 20 songs, and it's really hard to go through which ones are going to make it and which ones aren't. And but yeah, man, every album has been really exciting up to this point, and I think that's why we've kind of slowed down with the process of her new album, is because once COVID hit, man, um, our whole storyline changed in our personal lives, so we didn't feel like I don't know, like whether we should write about it or you know how we're gonna handle it or how we're gonna interpret it. So it made us kind of pump our brakes, man, and it made us like slow down with the music that we're gonna release right now, because we have to. I think we have to be sensitive to what our fans are going through right now as the moment too. And a lot of the songs that we were working on before, COVID really hit hard. They really didn't take anything into consideration with what's happening now. So now I think what we're trying to do is just kind of absorb what we're living through as artists. And I think when it's time to get to the table to work on music, it's going to be something that's going to fit what we're going through, but at the same time not dwell on it either.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait till that happens for Steph's new album.
It's interesting that you bring that up because, like, sometimes, like, people deal with trauma. And I mean, that's basically what we're going through right now is trauma, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a shock to society how we've lived our lives for as long as we can remember, right? But people deal with it in two different ways. It's like, okay, we'll wait until it blows over and then we'll just go back to, and then there's other people who just feel like it's therapeutic to just talk about it as much as it hurts, as
Mhm.
much as, so it's good that you're making that assessment. It's like, well, which direction do we want to go? Do we really want to talk about how this is really impacting us, or just say, hey, you know what, screw it, let's just keep, like you said,
Mhm.
I mean, no disrespect, right, but being
Yeah.
in not so sensitive to the situation. So that is
Yeah.
a good I mean, that's a good thing that you're assessing, your
Yeah.
the direction of the album there. I want to take a quick pause too to kind of catch up here on some of the chat.
Okay.
Let's see. Joe Cruz says, who would know better than Gilbert Velasquez? One thing I agree with him is the quality of music being put out there is just not up to par with all genres. And we can touch on that here in a second. Jesse Tovar wants to know, will Zavala be bringing back his cooking show? His grilled cheese segment is one I'll never forget.
Oh man, that's cool.
And
I would love to, man. I'd love to cook more online. Well, we'll see. Actually, that I've been approached now that because every Monday Stephanie had been doing quarantini shows, and those freaking shows took a week to produce. Somebody had talked about doing more than one a week, but man, as soon as we finish one, we have to get started on the next one, because I had to do like all the music programming, program the backgrounds that you'd see. So it took a lot of like effort and work to get those things done. And after we took a break, people started calling and opportunities started coming our way, and a few of them were different online shows that people would suggest that we did. So I think a cooking show is probably top 5 of things that we should do from the house.
and for those of you who are watching, I know that this show doesn't look like all that much, but let me tell you, it takes a whole day to get this
Yeah,
happening.
man.
And my son's really super young, so I can only work when he's taking a nap, and
Yes, yes.
so
Yeah, it's you know what? Again, man, like you were talking about earlier, how different people respond to situations differently, and I think even what we're going through right now, doing this interview, like, I don't think it might have happened if COVID hadn't happened. So
absolutely.
I think it's pushing us to still want to create and still reach our fans, but now it's through a whole different situation with the technology and stuff.
Hmm.
So I think it's really cool that a bunch of us are finding a way to still get through to our fans, even though we're not on the road anymore right now.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that there's a lot of us out there that are actually doing our best every week to bring content for Tejano fans. That way they have access to the music, to the artist, and I just really give like huge props to not only yourself but everybody out there that's taking time out of their week to put Tejano online for everybody to know what's up with the industry, man. It's really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, also, Nano Fuentes says, one of the most down to earth dudes I got to chill with. So, shout out to Nano
Cool.
Fuentes.
Yeah, he's a
Uh,
cool guy too, man.
yeah. And so, let me ask you this. It was kind of like, and I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, right? Or anything like
Right.
that. And we can kind of talk in broad strokes here, but like the question was brought up in regards to quality of music and people putting stuff out there, and I think Joe Cruz here was kind of making a reference to another interview that happened with PVT, rock and roll James Chavarria. And I think, and I
Yeah.
did watch that, and they were talking to, and I remember Gilbert talking about like how right now in Tejano music it seems like everybody's kind of going in different directions, and like there's no kind of like authority to say like this is good and this is not, and or even that there's a quality standard that music should be at. How do you feel about that? Because like I kind of have mixed feelings, and I'll kind of maybe taint your answer a little bit by kind of giving you how I feel about it, but like yes and no. Like I can see both sides, right? Like I can see like music needs to have like there's some people who genuinely like if it's Tejano music, they don't care if it's out of tune or whatever, they're gonna like it, right? But then there's also then you flood the market with a bunch of music that's um I don't want to say that it's not good, right? I mean, because from an artist's perspective, it's not like a matter of good or bad or better or whatever. It's like how somebody's feeling at that specific time or whatever they, everybody's doing the best that they can at all times, right? To the best of their ability. But how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel that there needs to be like some kind of standard or some kind of standardizing of something to say, hey, listen, this should not be on the radio, or do you think like, hey, man, throw it all against the wall, and if it sticks, then how do you feel about
Oh,
that? And if
well,
you
I
don't
mean, I
feel,
think there's different levels. There's different levels to that because, like it just that's just where we are right now. We're not.
Mhm.
We first of all, we don't sell the type of units that R&B mainstream. Man, like there's we're probably talking about like the level of money that Tejano music makes compared to any other genre. Like we're way at the bottom, bro. Like we don't make money like they make money, man.
no,
So first of all, so how are you gonna judge these bands that are doing the best they can? And they put their CD out and they take it to the radio station and they're proud of it. They don't know what they don't know. They're just all they know is that hey, we love music. We want to record. Our homie down the street records. He has a home studio. We're gonna go record. We're gonna do the best we can. And if they're kids, especially if they're kids, if they're younger, like early 20s, let them make their mistakes. Now, does it deserve to be on the radio? I think that's where that's what PDs are for, man. Like they should know like what sounds good and what doesn't sound good, and that's really their job, man. So it's up to them what they want to play, what they don't want to play, if it makes the cut, if it doesn't make the cut,
hmm
because I think as artists, like that's kind of what we got into this game to begin with, is just because we wanted to make music and it was fun.
yep,
Um, and I think there's a lot of that actually missing in the industry right now, like because we do have a lot of cats that really pay attention to how something sounds and if it sounds right or good quality. But it's just like there's something to be said for that chaos that comes from being inexperienced. And there are some magic moments that happen when you're just doing it for fun. And it would not happen if you had someone in the studio telling you that's not how you do it. This is how you do it. And that's why there's some producers out there that yes, they always get the same sound, but they always get the same sound. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So like, there's never going to be these happy accidents of awesome things that happen when people are just doing it for the sake of doing it. Um, but as far as how we're being judged right now for our quality, like it's tough, man. You do, as an artist, you do wanna hope that there's some kind of standard that people have to so they can say, okay, well, at least am I like zeroing out, like am I like not negative 25, like am I just at zero,
Mm-hmm.
like how are mixes supposed to sound? I think that's important to have someone that has that quality control, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that goes on the artist, like, or the producer. That's why you're always checking yourself. I know you do it as well. You're always listening, 100 times to your mixes on headphones, on speakers in the car. Like when you get into this business, like you don't know a lot, but you do a lot of trial and error, and hopefully by the time it's time to give something to the radio, you've already figured out, okay, this is crap and this is good. um, but I think that as long as we are continually learning and like trying to put better and better product out there using all the technology that's available right now, I think that for the most part, what you're going to be hearing on Tejano Radio is, I think, it's a reflection of where we are as an industry. So to judge it is kind of harsh, for better or for worse. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're trying to hold, like you're saying, you bring up Intocable. If you're trying to hold someone's first album to like an Intocable, there's got to be room for growth in there for the artist.
Yeah, and like, okay, so you were talking about Intocable. I was gonna actually bring them back up here for a second, but their last album, they recorded it at Sound City Studios. I mean, come on, that's
Yeah.
where like Nirvana recorded, and like Tom Petty, and like, you know, and here we are with our little laptops and whatever, and trying to like get that big sound, and it's not gonna happen, But again, like you were talking about budgets, about trying to get, that you can't really compare somebody's first work. But on the flip side to that, and again, to bring her up, Billie Eilish,
Hmm.
her first work
Yeah.
was just amazing, right? I mean, from a
Yeah. Well,
production
some people
standpoint.
have it though, but some
Yeah,
people have it.
some people have it.
Some
Yeah.
people, yeah, when they do their first album, it's going to be awesome, because
Hmm.
they're awesome, and it's just someone, I think, like Billie Eilish. Like I think she's her own worst critic, and I think she's going to tell the engineer it sounds like shit. She's going to say, this doesn't sound like whoever's album. Like, fix it. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I don't think that she's going to be the kind of artist that's going to put something out that she can't be proud of. And I think that's really what a lot of people need to do in the industry, is really have that amount of respect for your work to say, this isn't good enough, and it's not good enough.
Hmm.
And that's why when it comes time for the budget, that's where it's the key is like, okay, what am I going to spend my money on? I only got X amount of numbers. What do we spend our money on? And so like who your producer is, your studio, all that stuff, that's where all like those so important factors come in. So you really want to, man, just do the best you can with what you're working with, man, and hope that it comes out as good as it can.
And and to bound a piggyback off of that idea, I feel like Billie Eilish, her production and her album, the stuff that she's put out, is kind of like, at least from a personal standpoint, it's like a light at the end of a tunnel. And the reason I say that
Oh,
is because, I mean, I don't, like, me personally, when I create music, I don't create it with the intentions of an accolade, right? Like, I'm gonna record this and hope that it wins the Tejano Music Award, or I'm gonna create this and hope that it
yeah.
gets nominated for a Grammy or nothing. It's just like, you
Mm-hmm.
want to create something, right? But those accolades, to an extent, do kind of solidify some kind of like, hey, you did it, right? That being said, Billie Eilish produced her album in her bedroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Her brother was the engineer and producer and stuff, and like, so that goes to show you, you know what I mean? Like, when we talk about standards of quality, like, I mean, their setup couldn't have been any different from, I mean, yeah, of course it was probably a really good microphone, a really good preamp and stuff, but like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a DAW is a DAW, right? Like, you're either using Pro Tools or Studio One or Ableton or whatever, right? But like,
Yeah.
everybody has access to that who has a computer. right? So
Mm-hmm.
like you said,
Yeah.
you have to be able to say, hey, this sounds like shit, and I can't put this out, you know,
Yeah.
and or to say, hey, this does sound good, or what, and I've always been this type of person, is that like I don't mind criticism so long as it's
Mm-hmm.
constructive. If somebody just tells you, hey,
Yeah.
it sounds like shit,
Yeah.
and with no like solution,
Yeah.
you're just being a hater, right? But if you're like, hey,
Well, yeah, I mean, so I mean, because sometimes you're gonna get that. I mean, you're gonna get that. I mean,
yeah,
it just comes with the territory. You're gonna get
right.
haters out there.
But what I was getting at is that I always try to be the type of person that if I am going to give some kind of negative criticism, I have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to show that there's a way to rectify
Yeah.
my my criticism, right? If I was like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
vocal's not quite right, you should
Yeah.
fix the pitch on this one spot, or work on compressing it so it can
Yeah.
sit better in the mix or something like that. But if I'm just like, hey, that sounds terrible, that's
Yeah.
awful. That's like just soul
Yeah.
crushing. That's just like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
try to work so hard, but if somebody's going to be critical, that's the other thing. It's just try to like help. If you're going to criticize, try to help. Don't just think that by
Yeah.
throwing out negative criticism, that's going to help somebody. Like, yeah, those drums sound like crap. Don't
Yeah.
release that song. That's not how, that's not helping anybody. If you're going to be like, hey
Yeah.
man, maybe track it again with this mic on the snare, or try to use this kind of miking technique
Yeah,
over it. Or,
that's happened to me quite a few times, man, where bands will reach out when they're ready to put the single out, and like they're ready, bro. Like it's in their hands. They're like smiling, giddy, like they want to release this thing bad, and I'll listen to it and I'll be like, ooh, oh, and I'm just like, okay, so how did you do this? Oh, he just blah blah blah, and I'm just like, yeah. Oh man, I would say that you guys have to go in and recut that. That's the last thing they want to hear. Like they do not want to hear that they should go in and fix it. And the sad part is that if they just release it the way it is, they're going to rob themselves of success that they could have had if they would have just waited or listened to someone within a professional opinion and fix it and put it out right. Like
Mhm.
so many times, like I've heard that of bands that were so freaking close. If they would have just like changed a couple of things, man, they would have had a huge hit. But it happens, and unfortunately, what a lot of starting bands don't understand is that as soon as if you were to take an album that's not ready to be released yet, and you take it to the radio, and you try to make a relationship with the radio person with that album, they're gonna forever remember that album, and they're gonna always associate you with something that wasn't ready to be put out, and it's
Yeah.
very difficult to get that back.
First impressions,
So
man. First
yeah,
impressions.
first impression. So
Hmm.
it's better to, if you're gonna ask somebody for their opinion, be ready to take their opinion and do something about it. Don't just say, well, we're gonna release it, but he said this sounded like that, and
Hmm.
sometimes you don't get that second opportunity to for success.
Yeah. Zavala says that the bass doesn't sound good, but I think it sounds okay, so let's release it like this. It's
No, the bass isn't on. Like, hey,
yeah.
we forgot to turn the bass on.
Yeah.
It's okay, nobody
Or
knows.
just timing, man. Sometimes I've heard some stuff, and and I won't like I said, I'm not trying to be a hater, right? But there's been stuff like by the top of Tejano music
Oh
where I
yeah,
heard, I'm like,
yeah,
the timing is off on the drums, or like super, something's way off. And I think to myself, like, man, some of these people who are producing this, like, why didn't they just say, hey, let's cut that again? You know what I mean? I don't know if it
yeah,
was just out of time constraints or budget constraints, or whatever. But like, going back,
yeah,
I guess I'm putting my foot in my mouth, because if they could have done better, they would have done better, right? They were doing the
yeah,
best that they
yeah.
could, right?
Well, you never know. That's why I always say it. Like, I don't like to deal with rules, man. I really don't, because I think it's just all about the situation and trying to fix the situation as it goes. Because, it's not one size fits all. Unfortunately, in this,
Hmm.
in what I do, it's every situation is unique and it should be handled accordingly. So. Yeah, yeah, I hear some stuff sometimes, and I wonder what that person was thinking, or what made them come to that decision or that conclusion.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't really think there's a wrong way or a right way. Everybody's just doing what they feel, man, and I think there's enough room in the industry for everyone to get their wiggles out and get their sound out. But it's those bands that do it every year,
Mm-hmm.
every year. Like they eventually turn into this amazing super powerhouse if they can keep up the consistency. But that's the key, you know. Like maybe you have one bad album that you wish you never did, but if you come back with another one that's better, hey, you just redeemed yourself. And if
Yep.
the third one's even better than that, nobody's ever going to remember the first album. So you know, it's all about just staying consistent, learning, and doing the best you can to improve your quality the best you can. You know.
Mm-hmm. And I think there comes a time in some artists careers where they just kind of like they plateau. Like how can you get any better than where you are? So now it's more about trying to like tell a different story, but still like like so for example, I mean, not again, not to keep talking about them, but Intocable,
Yeah.
like they're not thinking to themselves, oh, this next album has to be better than the last one. They're all freaking good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even even Steph's albums, like to me, I think the last I don't know how many albums sound sonically great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
They're and they all sound good. Like like it's not like oh this album is better than the last one and those two are better than the ones before. No, it's like you get to a certain level where it's like you're not even worried anymore about the quality of the recording. You just telling a story. Like you're not getting hung up by all the technicalities of you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, when you reach a certain level, you know, that's one thing, man. When you reach a certain level, like being good and sounding good and having good songs, like that's expected. You know, like you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to have that. So then there comes a point where it's like, okay, you've got everything you need. Now where do you go? Okay, you've got the perfect sound, you got the perfect band, you got the great songwriter, you got the great producer. Okay, everybody's great. Now what? so that's that's the point where I think everyone should start to. But you know, I think maybe right now there's a lot more that are still trying to get up to that 0 point. So they're still negative, negative, negative. You know, there's still something about them where they're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, so many bands break up. It's so sad because I get like so heartbroken every time new bands form and then they break up because whatever, one of the band members, whatever, and they just can't do it. Nobody wants to do it, and I'm just like, no, man, your third album was supposed to be like the one for you guys. Like, stick together, please, work it out. But it's so difficult nowadays for bands to stay together and get to the point where their stuff starts to really sound mature,
Mm-hmm.
awesome, and really good as a band. It's a hard business, man,
It
really.
really is. I want to send a few more shout outs here. People that are I've been kind of messaging here. Michael Ibarra, who was my guest last week and also lent me his internet because you guys heard about the whole fiasco. And I'll tell you guys a real quick story. It happened again this week. It really did.
Oh,
And the garbage truck came through, ripped out my internet wire, and I had literally shout out going out to Angelo Alvarez, my neighbor. I actually had my Ethernet wire running out of my window into his router so I could get stuff ready for the show. But then the internet company came and got it all hooked up again. So I'm here in my studio with my own internet. I'm not stealing my neighbor's internet. Steve Alvarez Blue says Puro Z, and he gives the rock, hands and
the horns.
yeah, the horns. There you go. Uh, Mike Rodriguez says sometimes it's all bad. LOL. I think that was in reference to when we were talking about like when you're like, hey man, like your song's okay, but it needs this and this and this, right? And I guess
Yeah,
sometimes if it is all bad, then what do you tell
yeah,
them,
yeah.
right?
Oh, you're right, man. It's a tough question, and it's hard to tell somebody when they're doing something not right. I mean, because it, when you make music, man, you're putting your heart and your emotion on your sleeve, man. And for someone to tell you you're not doing it right, or you could be doing it better, no one wants to hear that. I definitely, have grown to get a thick skin because a lot of people would tell me stuff about my songs and my style, and I'd have to say like, well, let me see where they're coming from. Let me see who they are, and is it worth like addressing or just blowing off as haters, so but I think if you want to get better and if you want to get good, like you are gonna do some self what is it called, like
Yeah,
reflection,
yeah, self
and
reflection. There you go.
yeah, make yourself better, I think, so yeah, man, it's a tough, dealing with artists. And no, I shouldn't say dealing because it's not dealing. Because first of all, you're happy to be working on somebody's
Mm.
project, and everyone just has their level where they're at, and they have their own insecurities and their own. Everyone's different, but
But maybe
that's
dealing with
why
the
it's such a
situations,
delicate
right?
situation. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there you
delicate,
go.
man.
Yeah. I was gonna say something. We were talking. Oh, speaking of when you said
Oh, hey,
about
real
yeah.
quick, to everybody that's tuning in, I don't have my phone, so I can't see any of the comments or any of the shout outs or how many people are watching or any of that stuff. So if you've been saying stuff to me and I haven't been responding, I'm really, really sorry about that. But thanks to everybody that's watching, and I love you guys, man.
Yeah, and I kind of try to keep up here when I see some, quite a few messages kind of pile up. Then I try to get to them, and
Cool.
but I was gonna tell you, apparently I've been getting messages from Nano Fuentes all day about it being Zavala's fault. I don't know what he's talking about, but he wants me to ask you
Oh,
that.
Zavala's fault? Yeah, yeah. That
and
was funny. That was a little thing back in the day. Well, I guess I don't know how many years it's been now, but I used to host a Tejano TV show here in San Antonio called Tejano Imas, and
Mhm.
it was on KSAT 12. And it really made me switch gears from being a music producer to like like a content creator and like an entertainment creator, and I had to rely on these bands to come through and perform and interview and all that kind of stuff, and up until that point, I had only been dealing with my career and Steph's career, but basically it was in house, right? So I hadn't had to deal with other artists, other bands, all that kind of stuff until I started hosting this TV show. And so it kind of took me to another level, but also people started kind of recognizing me as being this host from TV. Because I mean, being on KSAT 12 here in San Antonio is a big deal. It's one of the biggest watched channels in San Antonio. And I think we were hitting 30,000 households every Saturday night. So it wasn't anything to sneeze at. It was really affecting the market in a positive way. But when you have that kind of attention on yourself, if you make your opinions vocal, you are always going to get hit a little bit harder than someone that doesn't have a following or whatever. So at that time, there was an album that got nominated for a Grammy, and I, for whatever reason, didn't think that it deserved to be nominated because it wasn't doing anything to push the genre. It was basically uh, doing the same old songs, same old sounds, same old progressions, same everything. Like, which is cool now that I understand. I'm a little bit more mature. I understand that there's a place for traditional Tejano music, right? But
Mhm.
at the time, I was all about no, the new, the new. So I made a statement and about or a post about that certain band that I didn't agree with it. Basically, that's all I was saying. But after that, man, like they went in, like they're the band and their family, like they went in on me, man. So like they started like posting about me and stuff, and at the time there was a Tejano club here in San Antonio called Graham Central Station, and it
Absolutely.
was like the biggest Tejano station. I mean, the Tejano
Club.
venue to check out bands and stuff, and they shut down, and it was at the time when really like Tejano was like I mean we had gone from this to like way to the bottom, and
Mhm.
the club closed down, and then someone from the band that I mentioned about, they said, well, it's probably Zavala's fault because all he does is talk bad about Tejano. So so after I read that, I kind of took the Zavala's fault and I ran with it, and like people started blaming like natural disasters on Zavala. Some bad crime happened. It's probably Zavala's fault. Probably Zavala's fault. So that's where the whole Zavala's fault thing came from.
Coronavirus. No, I'm just kidding.
Zavala's fault. Yeah, everything. It was so funny for a while. Like it got kind of annoying there for a little bit, but most of it was pretty dang funny, man. I tell you what.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm usually on social media. I don't remember that, and I guess for
It was a while back.
yeah, I mean, but it's all good. You know what I mean? Because that sounded like it might have been. Not everybody can take that sort of. I don't know that I would have been able to take that sort of thing. You were saying all of us musicians, we wear, to a certain
Yeah.
extent, our emotions on our sleeves, and no matter how much tough
Yes.
skin we build, it still kind of hurts underneath. You just don't show it
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. It's kind of a funny situation, but at the end of the day, you grow from it, and you can look back to where you were at that time, being younger, and to see how much you've grown and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm a different person now, man. I'm definitely I definitely understand that every perspective should be respected and listened to, especially when it comes to the music, because we definitely have our traditionalists out there that want Tejano to sound a certain way and
Hmm.
be played a certain way. But then there's another select few out there that want to push it forward and want to bring in new sounds and want new styles of Tejano to be accepted in the mainstream. So I've learned to try to understand both perspectives, and not just those two, but like just any ideas that come my way. I try to be open minded and try to be pushing the industry forward, but at the same time respecting the tradition that has been built over so many years.
Absolutely. We have a couple more shout outs or a couple more comments, and then I don't know if you want to wrap it up or if you want to keep talking, but either way, we've been talking for about an hour and a half here.
Okay.
Mike Rodriguez said, older cats told me when I was bad and it made me work harder. And that's absolutely a good, that's a good thing
Yes.
about the criticism, right? But the thing is that also, to that, like, if they tell you that it sounds bad and nobody tells you what sounds bad about it, that's obviously it
Yeah.
sounded like it, if he says he worked harder, then maybe they might have given him some guidance and say, hey, it sounds bad, but you got to do this.
Yeah.
Michael says, all I'm going to say is Lucy.
Loosely, looses.
Maybe. Yeah, it's yeah, okay. Oh, okay, never mind, we'll move on.
Loosey goosey.
Okay.
What's going on in there, man? Don't keep me in the dark. Let me know
I
the
think
joke.
okay, I think it's about we'll talk about it when we get off the air.
Okay, cool.
Okay. And then James Barella says, "Do you record Miranda Hartzog? Or is that, I don't know if I'm
Oh
pronouncing
yeah.
that
Oh
correctly.
yeah.
Out
Yeah.
of New
She's from
Mexico."
Albuquerque. Yeah, I
Yep.
do. I do. Uh huh. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. We've been working on a lot of music.
yeah. David Rodriguez Jr. from Deseo says, "Hey fellas, I'm late." He goes, "Baby duties," and you
Oh hey,
and
family
actually,
first.
you did a song for Deseo maybe a year or two ago, and so that one actually, and it's still getting a lot of airplay from what I somebody today just shared
Awesome.
it, so
Cool.
that's cool.
Yes.
Uh, Jesse Tovar says, "Great job, Rolando, on the interview. Thank you, Zavala, for all
Yes.
the awesome
Yes.
música. Lucis is my favorite." All right.
Thank you.
Michael goes
Thank you.
LOL, so I think I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
Michael. I'll talk to you about it afterwards. But anyways, so yeah, so what are you like kind of like if you want to wrap this up, like what are you kind of working on right now? What are some things that people should be on the lookout for? How can they get in contact with you? Different things that
Mhm.
anything you want to share just from here to everybody else,
Mhm.
anything that you want to kind of
No, man. Yeah, projects. There's been a bunch. And actually, because of COVID, we did have to deal with a lot of time constraints that we wouldn't have normally dealt with. But artists being able to come into the studio and things like that, it's definitely put a damper on the amount of music that's getting out. But the music that has been released here in the last few months has been doing great, man. You guys need to keep your eyes out for a band called Completo from Florida. We worked together on their last album, and they've been charting all over the country, and they've been having a lot of success as well. They have a duet with Aisha Aparicio from here in San Antonio that I believe got went to #1 on the Tejano Gold Countdown. I don't know if you guys follow the Tejano Gold Countdown, but that's one of the only charts that we have that's actually nationally syndicated all across the country. So if you're on that chart, you're getting played in San Antonio, Arizona, Florida, up where you guys are. There's so many stations that air the Tejano Gold show. So I would think as an industry, like, that's something we need to strive to, is taking care of the Tejano Gold countdown for sure, man. Because as far as having a standard, we definitely need a chart system out there that is a standard for the entire industry, and they're doing a great job. But as well, I've been working as well with Marcus Daniels. He has a bunch of good music and an awesome album that we're working on right now. And but yes, there's definitely stuff that I've been working on for Stephanie.
The Bobby Pulido album that you mixed.
Yes, that was actually a pretty good project. It was a quick one. Though. I had to move really fast on that one because at one time we were waiting for Roberto Pulido to do some little edits that he needed to fix on there, and then next thing you know, there was not going to be any fixes. They just needed the album done in a week. So I went from like not being ready at all to like turning in a fully mixed and mastered live album. And I'm really happy with the way that sucker came out. If you guys haven't listened to Bobby Pulido's live CD from Las Vegas, you definitely got to listen to that. I mixed and mastered that and did some of the editing and massaging so on that album. So that was pretty awesome. And here in the next few weeks, I'll be in the studio again with Jaime de Anda. I'm really happy to be able to be working with Jaime as a solo artist. I was the first producer that he chose to help him with coming out as Jaime de Anda, as his own project, and that's definitely an honor that I didn't take lightly. And if you guys are looking for some new conjunto with an old school vibe, like, that's definitely something that's pushing the boundaries in that genre for sure. But no, man, if people want to keep up with me, usually Facebook is the best way. I don't really mess with Twitter or Instagram or in any of that stuff as much as I should, but usually Facebook is where you can find me. But if you need to get a hold of me, you could go to the website, zavalamusic.com, and drop a line, let me know what's up. But yeah, man, I appreciate your time here tonight. I appreciate the show, and I appreciate all the fans that stopped through and said hi, and all the friends and homies out there that are listening in. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. But yeah, man, I appreciate the time and everything, man. It's been quite an honor to be here with you guys tonight.
It's been a lot of fun, man. I do appreciate your perspective and everything. All right, guys, don't forget, next week we have. Let me look real quick. Yeah, you know what? Is this the last week of the month?
No, I think we got one more weekend.
Okay, because
We might.
I have to get the graphics done for the next month. That'll be right around the corner. So let's see here. I have it right here. Hector Gutierrez, producer, keyboard arranger. Did a lot of stuff for David Lee back in the day, Gary Hobbs. So he'll be on the show, followed by Michael Rodriguez from Bump Latino. Also, Steve Rat Silvas, Joe Revedles, John Ortiz Jr., and so on and so on and so on. And then we'll keep going from there, and we'll see if people keep watching how they're watching. Then we'll keep doing it and stuff. We will.
Yeah, and I'm sorry we didn't get to talk more about keyboards and.
No, this is great, man. Because like I said, this is a lot of the stuff that we like cover, and maybe we can bring you back on, and we'll just exclusively talk about your keyboard setup and what you're doing.
No. I'm just saying, like, I hope that the fans out there got what they needed as far as like the production side of things, of what we're working with and using and all that. Because man, honestly, I haven't bought a keyboard in freaking like 15 years. It's all soft synth now, so like everything that I use for my sound bases, they're all from the computer, man. Like like keyboards are just controllers now.
Right. So your Yamaha that you're using is just a controller then?
Oh yeah, no sound. Well, live on stage is different. Obviously, having a keyboard is really great. But yeah, man, that's basically all I use for live. But when I'm in the studio, man, it's all soft synth.
Oh yeah.
I don't. But it's so funny because the newest Tejano stuff that I've been working on is all using D50s and M1s. So it's like I'm not even looking for uh, any like crazy new sounds, because when you use those sounds, they just sound right.
Yeah, they
So
just sound like
yeah,
Tejano, right? That's and not to kind of go down this rabbit hole of things to talk about, but like so right now the keyboard that you can't see the whole thing, but or actually you can't see any of it, but the people who are watching, this is the keyboard to a Kronos. And when
oh
the
cool,
Kronos first came out, I went and played it, and I didn't like it, and honestly, I still don't like it. But because you know how you were saying like a lot of stuff is computer based and stuff like that, I had issues with laptops dying at the shows or whatever. Me personally, right? The technology has gotten a lot better since those times. But when I bought the Kronos, I bought it because it had a solid state hard drive, so I could load samples and I could load sound fonts and I could load. I would resample some VST stuff that I had on the computer and then load it into the Kronos and then just take it with me live. And so I can trigger backing tracks, I can trigger vocal samples, whatever, right from the keyboard, and it's all enclosed in one unit. And so that's why I use the Kronos. But actually, if I were to be honest with you, I'm not using hardly any Kronos sounds. Like the Rhodes is really good, the acoustic piano is really good, but that's about it. Like I have an O1W EP sample that I use a lot. And then it has like internally like some DX7 EPs and stuff that I use. But
yeah, man.
like you're right, like all like I'm playing basically in a cover band, but all those old sounds like they're all resamples of M1s or Tritons and stuff like that. And so that's what I'm using for live, man. Like I mean, it's just
Yeah,
convenient to have it all in one board. You know what I mean? And basically, the whole OS behind the Korg Kronos is based on a Linux kernel, so it's literally a 10-inch color tablet with keys. I mean, it's basically a laptop, but it's all enclosed in one, and so on and so forth and whatever.
wow,
But
man, that's awesome.
so yeah, we're kind of on the same page here. And for those of you who want to know more about like VSTs and stuff like that, go back and watch the interview that we did with Mark Ledesma, because he was talking about how he uses MIDI controllers and laptops and stuff, and like a lot of people are doing that these days. I was one of those
Yeah,
guys for a
man.
long time too. The another one
Yeah,
to watch is Danny Fernandez. He was talking about how he made the transition over to using MIDI controllers in a laptop and stuff like that. But I was gonna say, if you're down, man, I'd like to have you back on the show another time. I'm gonna kind of spill the beans here to everybody who's watching. We're actually I've been in the talks of bringing back some of the people that have already done interviews. The first person that I'll probably have back as a repeat is going to be Mario Ortiz. And then what we're going to do is when people come back, we're going to do what's called kind of like almost like a reverse interview where they're not necessarily asking me questions or interviewing me, although that might happen. But what we might actually do is ask the audience like how they feel about certain things. So this way right now it's like the community is connecting with the artist, but now this will be a way for the artist to connect back with the community and to ask questions about whatever the keyboardist feels like asking the audience or
hmm,
asking me or whatever. So that'll be kind of interesting. So maybe we'll have you back on again, time with your schedule permitting or whatever. Also, I wanted to say, um, right now, one of the interviews that I want everybody to be on the lookout for, kind of towards the end of next month, is that I'm going to do a tribute to Jerry De La Rosa. And what I'm going to be doing is actually getting a few people that have been in close contact with him throughout his career before his passing, and then having them on here to talk. Chente Barrera will be on, Gilbert Velasquez, and maybe a few others. But we're gonna kind of do kind of like a everybody kind of share their story about Jerry and what he did for the industry, because obviously he's not with us anymore and whatever, but super talented
yeah.
musician, and I think he's worth talking about. So anyways, that's enough for tonight. Thank you everybody for joining us. Gabriel, if you want to hold off for a second, I'm going to sign off, everybody. We'll see you guys next week with Hector, and hasta luego.